Good morning and some quick market update. In the pre-market, we have a big drop in Chinese names. So Alibaba is down -3%, Baidu down also close to 3%, whereas NIO also down -2%. And it seems like the news relating to that might be this. I have just posted that in the Patreon community, and by the way, the patrons are helping this channel out in supporting it and keeping us going, so thank you very much. And well, the news is here that was posted by Sino Market on Twitter that China Life, PetroChina, Sinopec plan to delist depository shares from New York Stock Exchange. So this news seems to be the reason why also other Chinese ADR have been dropping in the pre-market. And well, I just posted here in the Patreon community that I actually think that this might be a sign that the delisting agreement between the US and China is in preparation for a finalization, so actually reaching an agreement. And by now, this is only speculation. I could be totally wrong on this, so don't rely on this, but that's how I personally read into that. Because, well, if we look at these companies there, these are all Chinese state-owned enterprises. So these are very large companies, and they're not your typical private technology company like Alibaba or NIO. No, these are one of the largest Chinese companies actually, which are listed in the US as well. But in my point of view, these are exactly the companies that China would kind of deem as having some state secrets or economic data, maybe even private data and information that could be exposed in such kind of a auditing scheme by the PCAOB. And therefore, maybe China really doesn't want those companies to get audited at all. And obviously, this would make a listing on the New York Stock Exchange impossible. And in my point of view, it cannot be a coincidence that all of these state-owned companies are actually announcing a delisting. We actually have also a China Securities Regulator Commission statement coming out here, and they are saying basically, well, listings and delistings are norm in the capital markets. The decision was made out of their own business considerations. This point, I would, kind of put a question mark there. I would say, with those state-owned enterprises, there are clearly political connections, and there was certainly, some people telling them to basically start delisting because they don't want these companies to, that the US has basically oversight over these state-owned enterprises. And so what does it do? Well, basically it removes some of the largest companies of China from the New York Stock Exchange. If you look at the market caps here, $134 billion invested, total market cap 300 billion that are gonna get delisted right now. And as Brian points out here, this is a loss for the US. These will be listing fees, volumes, tradings, and liquidity that will be removed from the New York Stock Exchange, and thereby makes also the New York Stock Exchange, let's say, less important, at least for those Chinese companies. And according to the CSRC, those companies can seek national as well as foreign capital elsewhere on other exchanges, so will not be limited in the way that they're operating. But this is kind of the end result, somewhat a loss there for the New York Stock Exchange and Wall Street, but those companies will just still continue to exist in China mainland and in Hong Kong possibly, and maybe also on other exchanges in the future. And so in a nutshell, the first learning is that this may pave the way actually for an actual agreement between the US and China for all of the private listed companies that can remain on the exchanges. And well, the US in person of Gary Gensler made clear that they will not agree to a deal if there will not be 100% transparency and oversight, so without any reductions. And obviously those state-owned enterprises would possibly not be able to agree to such a thing, while the private companies possibly and probably will. And in that way, it seems like the Chinese side is preparing for a deal in which there is this full transparency, and all of those companies that will not be forced to delist like those right now can actually stay on the US exchanges. At least that's my reading into that. Meanwhile, we have another news today that Ray Dalio, the largest US hedge fund, has increased its shareholdings in NIO during Q2. So they are, have a total position now of over 5.5 million shares. And it's quite interesting because, Bridgewater, you may know him from his book about the changing world order. And he's also, quite bullish on China. But what also got some of the investors upset today is the fact that while Bridgewater reports more shares in NIO, their holdings in Alibaba, so Baba, JD, NetEase, Billy, and Didi showed up as 0 in their filings. Well, this could be the case because possibly, and I don't know if that's the case, they already converted their shares to Hong Kong shares and are not longer holding ADRs, the US listed shares. That's now open for all of the investors who want to be sure that in the case of a delisting, they can continue to buy and sell their shares. They can just move them to Hong Kong because, of course, Alibaba, JD, they are already listed there. And so that might be the case in the move here by Bridgewater. They could also have sold those companies, of course, and remain with 0 shares, and also load up on NIO still. That might be the case, but anyways, you see all of these implications are currently happening around this whole delisting saga. That, by the way, has now kind of an extended deadline because, and this one wasn't really much reported, but I posted it also in the Patreon community again. There was just a recent article about the US Senate passed a bill aimed at boosting their competitiveness with China. So this is about the whole bill about the chip manufacturing, bringing it back home to America. And what is interesting is, and that was really not covered anywhere else, is that the finalized bill, which is actually against China, right, about competing with China, removed a provision that would have accelerated the deadline for China to meet audit requirements from early 2024 to early 2023. So basically, they used one of those US Senate passed bills that's actually tough on China there to remove one paragraph which was previously in there that would have accelerated the deadline for the delisting of the US listed Chinese companies. So what I'm reading into that is that it seems the talks are still ongoing between the US and China in the background. And it seems that, there might be a chance still for a deal, and China's preparing for it now with delisting some of those state-owned enterprises, which they would never accept that there would be such a kind of an oversight, while possibly agreeing for the private companies that this might be possible. Meanwhile, it seems the US saw that this also might be a possible scenario, and thereby, removing this kind of quicker deadline here. Again, this is just my interpretation. I could be totally wrong with that. Ask your broker in case you are, for example, holding US shares of NIO. If you can convert them to Hong Kong shares in the case of a delisting, you can do that in preparation, like investors like Ray Dalio might be doing currently with shares like Alibaba. But the deadline is still quite far out. We might see a deal before that. For some of the smaller Chinese companies like Xunlei or Sap Health currently, there is no alternative listing. So this is a big black box how this will turn out for them. But for companies that are listed in Hong Kong, generally, you still have ownership in the companies. Even in the event of a delisting, you can continue to trade and sell and buy them afterwards on the new exchanges. And the only thing you need is a brokerage that supports doing so. That's as far as I can tell. Do your own due diligence. This is not financial advice. Speak to your broker. But that's as much as I can report about today. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next one.